Hello, everybody. Welcome to Freedom Friday, the power of perspective.
Ooh.
Right? Actually, there is a little bit of a new because, like, oh my God. So if it's true that when I'm observing and I'm connecting to something, I'm literally influencing the reality. It can feel potentially scary, but also incredibly empowering. So I want to introduce my guest today, Colette Pellissier, and I am so thrilled to have her with us. Probably my first big with Colette was when we were both presenting a year ago for Wellbeing Fest, and I was in the audience experiencing what she was presenting, which is very much what I'm teasing out that she's going to tap into today. And it was about this, how we connect in relationship, where things might go out of alignment, and how we can get into a place of a higher level of connection and flow. And it's hard enough when we're just observing our reality, and then we bring another person into it, and we got all these energies that are going back and forth. So one of the things that really showed me the power of what she guides people to do is I just went home. I had a situation unfold with my husband. He was upset and I went home late, but I was like, all right, I'm going to think about what Colette said and just take this perspective of seeing things from this bigger observer angle. And as I allowed myself to pull my energy up to that place, I could see it all unfold. I saw me, I saw him, I saw us, and I was able to figure out how to engage in a really healthy, healing way that brought us back to flow from a place that really could have been like slamming the door, I'm done, lights out, you're a jerk. So I was so grateful and transfixed, like, oh my gosh, that was so simple and so powerful of a practice. So I'd love you to just kind of riff and flow with whatever comes out to share about that concept and technique that we're diving into today.
Wonderful. Well, it's such a delight to be here with you. And I think this notion about perspective is so important because the truth is, like, our perspective is everything. It creates the context. It's the lens through which we see and experience everything. And we've heard it said, right, that our perspective is our reality. Mm-hmm. And that's really true. And so in lies the power that you're pointing to, right, which is, gosh, it actually puts us in a place of ownership and responsibility in order to, what do I want to say, like harvest the bounty of empowerment that comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what are some like practical embody ways that we can connect into this incredible superpower we all have?
Well, maybe the first thing, I love to say this to folks, it's like, you don't have to believe everything you think. That's a first recognition, right? That just because we're having a moment of a conclusion about meaning making about something that's going on in any interaction, whether we're having it with ourselves, kind of in our own inner landscape, or with people, or with circumstances in our life or in our work, it's like, the conclusion is not necessarily the truth about what's going on. And so if we don't get hijacked by that and instead choose, like, what's a neutral point of view, at least, is some altitude, right? So maybe the bigger concept that spoke to you, I think, at the recording that you're pointing to is this notion, like the goal line versus the soul line.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. So, what I like to point to is we're kind of all well trained in the goal line perspective, that I need to win. And sometimes when I win, that means somebody else is going to lose, that there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. There's my ideal outcome, and then there's anything that isn't that, right? And when we got it set up that way, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's really normal. It's a place we've all started from, is that it sets up this duality of something good's going to happen or something my way or not. And that starts to make our conclusions more important than what's actually trying to happen in the moment, right? So there's this other dimension that says soul line. If we hop on the soul line, it gives us some altitude. And when the more altitude we have, kind of the less important the goal line information is, and it becomes more about, experiential. And if we know that like goal line is good and bad, so what's at the top of the soul line? It's love. The highest perspective of love. And what else could we equate that to if that's not easy for us to experience kind of tangibly? Well, it's joy, inspiration, laughter, creativity, compassion. Yes.
Yeah, that's part of what I was just seeing, like thinking of like communicating in this way can feel the duality of it.
Yep.
Almost I don't want to say battle. Sometimes it can feel that way, but when you go up to that other level, it isn't, you embrace the fullness of it.
Yes.
So when you open into that heart space, that love space, wow.
Yeah. And from that place, that invites us into, well, there's this question of like, if the lens of perception is everything, like how do we clean it, right? We wash off the lens. And so then there's this question like, well, what would love do? It's a way of invoking the altitude. What would love see right now? Whatever's going on. What would love hear in this conversation? It's a deeper form of communication, isn't it? To get beyond the symptoms and the moment of the dynamics and get to the deeper, like what's the deeper undercurrent that all of this is riding on, and what might it inform in terms of how I could show up in service to love, rather than at the duality. Often we're in service to what? Our wants, maybe to fear even, right? Because there's good outcome and then there's the outcome I don't want, which I'm kind of afraid of. Right?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think that is one of those subconscious, unconscious things that's running the show more often than we're aware of, because other emotions may kind of override, but that underlying fear that doesn't even want to be seen. It's almost scared of being seen. Like, oh, no. Oh,
right.
So it's like part of owning the perspective is owning all of that is keeping us stuck.
Yeah. And what does that ask of us, right? In a way that asks us to trust ourselves, that we can navigate when something comes up that we haven't been aware of before, or that we can be with our disappointment and not have it become projected onto somebody else, right? But to actually own it and work with it and see what is it trying to reveal to us about what we need more from ourselves in the moment,
Yes.
Yeah.
How, what I hear is using this concept in the inner dialogue, right? So as those things start to come up, being able to fully move into that space where you are really from a high level, nurturing and showing compassion to all of yourself, this self.
The beautiful thing, right?
This self isn't judging. This not like this is good and this is bad. I think that's important, because sometimes we can get into the feeling like if I'm ever here, then it's bad and I've failed. And that's simply not true. That's part of our human experience, and how much we grow through the practice. I mean, that's what I really became aware of, and I'm always continuing to become aware of, is it's a practice that as we do this, it becomes strengthened. So if we find ourselves like getting sucked into old patterns here, it becomes easier and easier. You build this heart path, a different way of connecting.
It's a habit, right? All of these things are habits, like habits of thought, habits of reaction, habits of action, habits of conclusion is just a habit of thought. And it happens so fast inside of us that we think it's provoked by what another person did or the situation or whatever is going on out there. When actually, if we can trace it back to its origin, which happens in a nanosecond, it's so fast, and the deeper the habit, the faster it happens, is that it's originating from inside of us, right? It's from our own, it's a habituated response based on some prior experience that we had, right? And so in addition to, it can sound sort of soft and metaphysical and existential, but it's actually also really grounded in neuroscience, right? That says we have these really fast connections that we make to prior experience and what that means, so that next time we can be safe when something that feels kind of similar shows up again or threatens our happiness or whatever story we're making up or living into. And so, the way out of that is to maybe soul line perspective, recognize, and you brought up this notion of growth, is that love wants us to evolve into the fullness of who we really are. And these distractions, these misunderstandings, misidentifications that we have about our power belonging to somebody else, like our happiness belonging to, like somebody else needs to show up in a certain way in order for me to be okay. That's just a huge misunderstanding, right? And love is the only way through that, because it asks us to lift above and see, well, what is that distraction, that disruption, that upset, the trigger? What is it trying to reveal to me about what I'm ready to actually work with and heal right now? If we believe that love has the highest intention for us to grow and heal, then that becomes the lens that we look at. And we can say, rather than, like, why are you acting that way again? Like, thank you for revealing to me where I'm ready to heal at a deeper level now. In honoring, the whole purpose of relationship, which is to help, you've said this many times, a mirror for ourselves, right? Well, how do we honor that rather than get triggered or activated by it? Is to say, well, gosh, what is this trying to reveal to me? What is it mirroring back to me right now? And look what I must be ready for, because the what isness of the situation, right, says I'm ready for this right now.
Wow, powerful stuff. So let's say, we're open to this, right? So that's level one. It's like, maybe for some of you, you've not even heard about this way of approaching communication before. And so there's that, we go through phases, like where it's like, you see yourself again and again, like being stuck. And it's like, that's part of it. So loving yourself compassionately through that, because we can get really stuck and like, no. So that's one. But also, is there anything like you use in your practice when you're in those moments? Because clearly, like, what I'm hearing is it's allowing yourself to have that space to make a different choice.
Yes.
Because we do have that, even as quick, as those neural pathways and those habits can be, there's still space between what we're experiencing, what we're perceiving, and then our action reaction. So is there anything that can support creating a little more space from here to here?
Yes, there's all manner of things. And you've pointed to this concept of a practice, which is the real deal. Like, the first thing is to really recognize, like, this situation that I'm finding myself in, this person who's been gifted to me as a mirror, right, is this has probably been a long time building. And so it is to be patient with ourselves while we move into greater empowerment in relationships. And so is to be really aware of our own inner landscape, our own narrative. And the place I always begin with people, and I've worked with hundreds of people on transforming the quality of their relationships without the other person knowing anything about it. They don't have to know anything about it, because it's an inside job, is to actually begin by paying attention. It's not a doing thing, it's a noticing thing, because the very foundational skill is capacity for neutral observation, is to be able to separate your thinking self from your acting self and just notice how you're showing up in any given moment. And so this is a lovely practice that has endless patience for us to be able to just witness kind of, what are the nature of my thoughts? How many times did I get triggered today? What am I noticing about the kinds of things that trigger and activate me? So it's to become really almost like a, I want to say a magnifying glass, but not in the way of making ourselves wrong. This is not about catching ourselves doing something wrong. It's about becoming an observer in our life. Being a neutral observer in your life is like transformational, because it allows you to witness without charge what's going on. A lot easier to see the truth in that moment, to witness with the eyes of love through neutrality rather than through trigger. And so this is a place to begin. And it may feel to you like it's a slow burn, but there's this build that happens with your willingness to start noticing. And let's go back to the blurb that you wrote up about quantum science. As soon as you change the lens that you're using when you witness your life, it starts to change how your life unfolds. And it changes because you're seeing it differently, seeing it more neutrally. It tends to unpack and unravel and soften the charge, which then you can see like, oh, maybe that, and then you have the space to say, you discover space there when you're willing to notice that, oh, I could actually choose love right now, or I can choose my old habit of fear. And the best thing I can say about it is it's a practice. And how long does it take? It takes as long as it takes. And one day you wake up and you realize like, oh, you know what? A week ago, that thing would have sent me through the roof, or would have sent me running for the hills. And I was actually able to stand and just notice like, look at that. And look, I'm feeling a little triggered right now. And that means I get to go do my work before I engage on this topic, or whatever choice you make next. So it's super approachable, very powerful. And in some ways, don't let your personality tell you, your ego say like, oh, that's too simple. It couldn't be that easy, because in a way, it kind of is. Like that's the birthplace of anything else that can happen.
Wow. Wow. So powerful. And I think the two pieces I want to call out that you mentioned is the piece that, like, if you do have a relationship that you're struggling with, the work starts here. The work starts here. And it is, and I've witnessed this as well. I witnessed that in the event that I described, is like, it's not that the person who you have the relationship with needs to even know what you're doing. You shift the energy, the relationship changes.
Yep.
It just happens like magic.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece that I think is just so valuable and important is just, just to go back to the inner work.
Yeah.
the inner work is the most important piece, and everything else is just reflecting. And is there as a guide, can you approach it as the loving observer with awe and wonder of like, okay, this is where I need to place my focus. I'm seeing this. Such an important message. And that leads me to, on the 13th of November, super excited that our collaborative will be hosting Let in the Light, Rewriting Your Relationship Stories Through the Language of Love. And Colette is going to be a pivotal part of that program, weaving in exactly what we've tapped into. And we'll be integrating that with the work of Paula Lord, who's a pranic energy healer. And it's like all going to come together in such a way where you're getting this information, you're moving the energy, and then literally, so Kelly, who I spoke with last week, will be guiding us through an exercise where we're literally visibly working on how we can reframe the way we connect in relationships. So anything else you want to put a shout out about that event?
Well, I think, what comes to mind, because humor is so important, but Ram Dass, right, has this saying, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family, right? And so here we are on the eve of the holiday times. And so we are headed for interaction with some of our most devoted teachers. That's the truth. And so, right, I think our intention at the gathering on the 13th is to actually just sort of demystify what it can look like to materially shift our experience of relationships, and to do it in a way that's not conceptual, like we're not going to talk about it, we're actually going to do it together. And there's something magical that happens when we're in community with people that have a shared intention of, walking towards love and learning how to translate love into action in ways that maybe they've known and forgotten, or maybe they haven't thought of in the same way. And it's maybe the best form of living is to try things, and almost like a mad experiment, like try something different and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to get to play together. We're going to be in a sandbox together for a few hours and emerge, enter in with one frame of mind and exit in a different space. Like, that's our hypothesis. And we hope that, your viewers and those who feel called will join us and just enter into that experiment for themselves to see what's possible. Because gosh, if it could be that easy to transform how the holidays go for us, it feels worth it to me to give it a go.
So powerful. We all need more right now, more than ever. So
yes, please.
And it's interesting because, just to think about the holidays, one of my favorite movies, and I'm sure I'll find the song to put in the comments, but the Muppet movie Christmas Carol, and the ghost of Christmas Present, who has short-term memory loss and can only be in the present moment. He sings a song about Christmas being like, it's the season of the spirit. It's the season of the heart. And if you hear it, we can make it last all year, and it's just like, I'm gonna cry. I love the song. And that is the essence and the message, the spirit of the holiday season. I know it gets over glamorized with Hallmark and everything else that can make us feel like, I don't have that.
Yeah.
But it is a higher level connection that exists in these seasons, Thanksgiving with gratitude and Christmas with giving and love. And again, both of them about sharing. So that's there for us. So it's like really cool to think about, in this day and age when there is so much fear and uncertainty, if we can amplify anything that's connected with love and spirit and giving and gratitude, we need to do that. So join us on the 13th. And thank you so much for spending time with me today, Colette. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. And thanks everybody for joining.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.